Welcome to Ignorantia Legis, episode number 33. It is now the 26th of November 2020. Salamat sa pag-iguman ka na karon mga kaigsunan. Okay. Now, for this afternoon, there is atong law school online. May discuss sa topic sa labor law and social legislation. Labor law and social legislation. Okay, so naghanatag na discuss nga introductory topic sama sa sa mga sama sa mga articles on the Constitution, article sa Constitution regarding labor law and social legislation. Ano kita sa other related laws aside from the Constitution? Ang related laws, Civil Code, Article 19 of the Civil Code, every person every person must, in the exercise of his rights and in the performance of his duties, act with justice, give everyone his due, and observe honesty and good faith. Article 20. Every person who, contrary to law, willfully or negligently causes damage to another shall compensate the latter for the same. Article 21 of the Civil Code. Any person who willfully causes loss or injury to another in a manner contrary to morals, good customs, or public policy shall compensate the latter for the damage. Article 1700. The relation between capital and labor are not merely contractual. They are so impressed with public interest that labor contracts must yield to the common good. Therefore, such contracts are subject to the special laws on labor unions, collective bargaining, strikes and lockouts, closed shop, wages, working conditions, hours of work, hours of labor, and similar subjects. Article 1701. Neither capital nor labor shall act oppressively against the other or impair the interest or convenience of the public. That's the principle of non-oppression. Article 1702. In case of doubt, all labor legislations and all labor contracts shall be construed in favor of the safety and decent living for the laborer. Note, Article 1702, the Civil Code is related to Article 4 of the Labor Code on construction in favor of labor. Article 1703, no contract which practically amounts to involuntary servitude under any guise whatsoever shall be valid. So, yung tawag involuntary servitude. Kuan ka, di mo gusto. Di ka mapugos. Ha? Di ka mapugos. Article 1708. The laborer's wages shall not be subject to execution or attachment except for debts incurred for food, shelter, clothing, and medical attendance. Article 1709. the employer shall neither seize nor retain any tool or other articles belonging to the laborer. Article 1710 of the revised of the Civil Code. Dismissal of laborers shall be subject to the supervision of the government under the laws. Number 2, revised penal code. So, provisions of the revised penal code on slavery, on labor law and social legislation. Article 272. The penalty of prisión mayor and a fine of not exceeding 10,000 shall be imposed upon anyone who shall purchase, sell, kidnap, or detain a human being for the purpose of slaving him. If the crime to be committed for the purpose of assigning the offended party to some immoral traffic, the penalty shall be imposed in its maximum period. Article 273. Exploitation of child labor. Exploitation of child labor. The penalty of prisión correccional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who, under the pretext of reimbursing himself or a debt incurred by an ascendant, guardian, or person entrusted with the custody of a minor, shall against the latter's will retain him in his service. Article 274 of the revised penal code that touches on labor law and social legislation. Services rendered under compulsion in payment of debt. The penalty of arresto mayor in its maximum period to prisión correccional in its minimum period shall be imposed upon any person who, in order to require or enforce the payment of a debt, shall compel the debtor to work for him against his will as household servant or farm laborer. Pero okay ra niya nga bayaran siya by service, kira. Pero di mo pugos. Article 278. Exploitation of minors. The penalty of prisión correccional in its medium and minimum periods. In its minimum and medium periods, and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who shall cause any boy or girl under 16 to perform any dangerous feat of balancing, physical strength, or contortion. 2. Any person who, being an acrobat, gymnast, rope walker, driver, wild animal tamer, or circus manager, or engaged in a similar calling, shall employ in the exhibitions of these kinds children under 16 years of age who are not his children or assistants. So, yan mga anak pwede. 3. Any person engaged in the callings enumerated in the next preceding paragraph who shall employ any descendant of his under 12 years of age in such dangerous exhibitions. 4. Any ascendant, guardian, teacher, or person entrusted in any capacity with the care of a child under 16 years of age who shall deliver such child gratuitously to any person following any of the callings enumerated in paragraph 2 hereof, or to any habitual vagrant or beggar. If the delivery shall have been made in consideration of any price, compensation, or promise, the penalty shall, in every case, be imposed in its maximum period. In either case, the guardian or curator of convicted shall be removed from office as guardian or curator, and in the case of parents of the child, they may be deprived temporarily or perpetually in the discretion of the courts their parental authority. 5. Any person who shall induce any child under 16 years of age to abandon the home of its ascendants, guardians, curators, or teachers to follow any person engaged in any of the callings mentioned in paragraph 2 hereof, or to accompany any habitual vagrant or beggars. Parang yung gigon nga, day, uban din day. Saan ka na? Kanang ipapon uban mo. Kanang yung ba, uban nga to ni ko anday. Ikaw mo advice, hindi na pwede. Article 291. Revealing secrets with abuse of office. Now remember, we're talking about labor law, but we're discussing specifically right now, we are at the revised penal code, certain provisions of the revised penal code that touches on labor law and social legislation. Article 291, revealing secrets with abuse of office. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any manager, employee, or servant who in such capacity shall learn the secrets of his principal or master and shall reveal such secrets. Ang ipasabot ana, corporate secrets, dili illegal secrets. Illegal secrets, pwede ka masumbong na. Article 292, revelation of industrial secrets. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon the person in charge, employee or workman of any manufacturing or industrial establishment who, to the prejudice of the owner thereof, shall reveal the secrets of the industry of the lot. Article 289 of the Revised Penal Code, formation, maintenance, and prohibition of combination of capital or labor through violence or threats. The penalty of arresto mayor, fine not exceeding 200 pesos, shall be imposed upon any person who, for the purpose of organizing, maintaining, or preventing coalitions of capital or labor, strike of laborers, or lockouts of employer, shall employ violence or threats in such a degree to compel or force the laborers or employers in the free and legal exercise of their industrial work, if the act shall not constitute a more serious offense in accordance with the provisions of this code. Kaya namin sahay, maraming trabaho, tinaligmat na pa the same act produces a crime nga mas serious pa. Special laws that touches on labor and social legislation, social security system law, government service insurance law, limited portability law, National Health Insurance Act, Home Mutual Development Fund law, expanded maternity leave law, Solo Parents Welfare Act, Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children, Magna Carta of Women, Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act, Anti-Age Discrimination Employment Act, Expanded Senior Citizens Act, Domestic Workers Act, or an act allowing the employment of night workers, Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, Job Start Philippines Act, Philippine Green Jobs Act of 2016, Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos Act of 1995, Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law. So, grabihan, kadaghanan ng mga laws touching labor law social legislation. Mabuang ka sa bar, kadaghan mo na. The state shall, declaration of policy, basic policy. The state shall afford protection to labor, Article 3 na sa Constitution. Afford protection labor, promote full employment, ensure equal work opportunities regardless of sex, race, or creed, regulate the relations between workers and employers, and assure the rights of workers to collective bargaining, just and human conditions of work, self-organization, and security of tenure. Limitations to the protection afforded. 1. The protection of the rights of workers cannot justify disregard of relevant facts in the construction of the text and applicable rules in order to arrive at a disposition in favor an employee. Pal versus NLRC, 1991. 2. Courts cannot render decisions on the basis of sympathy for the working man at the expense of the employer. Caltix versus PH Labor Organization, 1953. It's a 1953 case. Landmark case siya. 3. Where both parties have violated the law, neither party is entitled to protection. Basco Union versus CIR, 1939. And 4. Protection to labor authorizes neither oppression nor self-destruction of the employer. Pacific Mills versus Alonzo in 19. Now, Article 4 of the Constitution, construction in favor of labor. All doubts in the implementation and interpretation of the provisions of the Labor Code, including its implementing rules and regulations, shall be resolved in favor of labor. If the provision is clear and unambiguous, it must be applied in accordance with its express terms. So, that is Article 4 of the Labor Code. Limitations to liberal construction. 1. Protection to labor and resolution of doubts in favor of labor cannot be pursued to deliberately omit a miscarriage of justice. The right to obtain justice is enjoyed by all members of society, rich or poor, worker or manager, alien or citizen. The law also recognizes that management has rights, which are also entitled to respect and enforcement in the interest of fair play. St. Luke's Medical versus NLRC, 2007. Application to the appreciation of evidence. The rule enunciated in Article 4 of the Labor Code likewise applies in the appreciation of evidence in labor proceedings. If doubts exist between the evidence presented by the employer and the employee, the scale of justice must be tilted in favor of the latter. Dreamland Hotel versus Johnson, 2014. Reasons for affording greater protection to employees. Number 1. In accordance with the doctrine that those who have less in life should have more in law. Eastern Shipping Lines versus POAA, 1988. In the matter of employment bargaining, the employer stands on higher footing than the employee. Number 3. There is greater supply than demand for labor. Number 4. The need for employment by labor comes from vital and even desperate necessity. Sanchez versus Harry Lyons, 1950. Administrative interpretation. A rule or regulation promulgated by an administrative body in excess of its rule-making authority is void. Thus, an administrative interpretation which takes away benefits granted in the law is ultra vires. CBTC Union versus Clave, 1986. Now, Article 5 of the Labor Code. Rules and regulations. The rules and regulations issued by the DOLE shall become effective 15 days after announcement of their adoption in the newspapers of general circulation. Article 6 of the Labor Code. General rule. The code applies to all workers, whether agricultural or non-agricultural, including employees in a government corporation incorporated under the corporation code. Remember, under the corporation code, na may government corporations which have their own special law or special charter. Exceptions. Again, general rule, it applies to all workers. Exceptions. Corporate officers involved in intra-corporate disputes under PD number 902A now fall under the jurisdiction of the regular courts pursuant to the Securities Regulation Code. NACPIL versus IBC in 2002. Number 2. Employees of government-owned or controlled corporations, GOCC, created by special charter or original charter. Such employees are governed by the civil service, not by the labor code. Juco versus NLRC, 1997. Note, the phrase with original charter refers to corporations chartered by special law as distinguished from corporations organized under the Corporation Code. Nasico versus NLRC, 1988. Number 3, local water districts. Tanhay Water versus Gabaton, April 1989. Exception. Where NLRC jurisdiction is voluntarily invoked to secure affirmative relief, the party is stopped from denying the very same jurisdiction. Zamboanga City Water District versus Buat, 1994. Number 4. Foreign governments. Jusmag Pil versus NLRC, 1994. Number 5. International agencies. Lasco versus UNR FNRE, 1995, and employees of intergovernmental or international organizations, 1992. Government agencies. The National Parks Development Committee is an agency of the government, not a GOCC. Its employees are covered by civil service rules and regulations since they are civil service employees. Section 2, Article 2, 1987 Constitution, EO 180, Section 14. So those are the officers or workers and companies not subject to the Labor Code of the Philippines because they are covered by another law such as the Civil Service Law. Okay, sa sunod na tong meeting, remember mag-cycle ta ni everyday, mag-cycle ta. Laylay nga topic. Sunod na tong meeting ni kuan na ta, mag-discuss na ta pre-employment conditions, situations. O naminaw din nato karon si Alex Villarmino, watching from Barangay Lahog sa south part sa Cebu City, not Cebu Province, Cebu City. Mga puntanan gikan ni Lianik Cindy of ni Angela Samuel. Okay. Now, thank you for being with me. Salamat yung pagiguban ka na ako. Di lang ta masugod po yung topic kaya maalanganin ta. Major issue ba ng pre-employment topics. And happy Thursday ninyo. We are now, this is our episode. This is our 33rd episode sa Ignorantia Legis. And today is the 26th of November, the year 2020. So, salamat yung paggaban ka na ako. Thank you. Okay. Salamat yung paggaban ka na ako. Thank you. And good afternoon. See you tomorrow. Okay.